Pastor Ian Sweeney, you are president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the UK and Ireland, have been for the past 4 years, and during that period you've had one consistent message: we need to reach out beyond ourselves to the 70 million plus people of these islands. We've got to overcome the barriers. Are we succeeding with that message?
Yes and no. Let me start with the yes. We are making some progress, and I praise God for that. And I was looking over the past 4 reports of baptisms and so on within the British Isles, and we've had over 950 baptisms, which is just tremendous. We've had 1,100 plus accessions to the church. So in that sense, we are succeeding in being an outward-facing church. But I say no in the context of, I know there is still much more work to be done in that regard, particularly with our local congregations, and some of our local congregations really understanding that God has placed us where He has placed us to reach the communities in which we are worshipping.
You've consistently been sharing that message and pushing congregations and us as individuals to look outwards, and you are getting success, maybe in terms of Dublin as an example.
Yeah, I mean, Dublin has been a tremendous success in that way. We chose Dublin as our union city for evangelistic focus and part of the General Conference initiative. Okay, the headline figures, over 40, 50 baptisms, and that's the headline. But actually what I think is even of greater significance is that the local churches in the Dublin area have really embraced what God has called us to be, which is to be salt, to mingle, to be a part, to infuse our communities. And that was highlighted, for example, in one of the centres of influence that has just recently opened in Dublin. And one of the great stories that the president, Pastor David Neal, shared is that when they had the opening of this centre of influence, which is a health centre kind of thing for the community, they didn't have a ribbon to do the opening. So he ran off to a local shop, florist I believe it was, and the florist said, "No, I don't want any payment. We've actually seen, I've been observing what you and your church community are doing. It is so positive, it is so beneficial. I'm not taking payment, here it is, use it for what you need it for." And to me, that's what the church is about.
And the success of Dublin is that there is a mixture of traditional evangelism. Mark Finley was standing there doing what he does best, but there was also all of these other programs as well. Has that been expanded? Is similar things happening in London and Manchester and other cities?
Yeah, most definitely. And what I think it's a part of, it's actually Adventist congregations and an Adventist church recognizing that we have a story that is actually of great interest to the wider community. I sometimes we hear a lot of doom and gloom, old people aren't interested in what we've got to say. Actually, they are interested in what we have to say, because we've been given, for example, we call it the health message. Let me call it the health story. The health story is something that in the British Isles and the Republic of Ireland, the government is interested in. More or less every day, certainly every week, there is always a health interest story. God has placed us as a Seventh-day Adventist church. He has given us a message. He's given us a story of preventative health, of living life to the full. And when a congregation has applied that and shared their story in their community, there's been tremendous impact. So, for example, we've got that illustration in Dublin, but there are so many. Bristol, where they've had evangelistic meetings and they've been successful, but also the local congregations have been sharing their story with a local school and have been helping a local school with healthier packed lunches. That's all part of the news story. So we have so much to share if we just understand. Let's get out there and share it.
And talking of schools, I mean, the local congregations actually adopted a school.
Yep.
In Bristol. If you go up to the other end of the British Isles to Scotland, to Aberdeen, our most northerly church, there the local pastor has managed to bridge communities and is actually teaching and lecturing in a local school.
Yeah, and again, it's about sharing what we already have as a Christian group, as a Seventh-day Adventist church. And they are interested in Pastor NJ up in Aberdeen. He's begun to share the story of forgiveness. It's the thing that we know about, we practice. And then when he's sharing it in a local school where many are not believers, they're actually giving him invites to come back again to share more about the story that we already have. And I think that we sometimes were maybe a little bit too shy or reticent to think, well, people aren't interested. The story we have is a very interesting story.
So being with the people, tell me a story. Tell me about someone sitting on a bus, an African sitting on a bus, and yet reaching an Irish person in Scotland.
Yeah, and again, it's a wonderful illustration of just how much we can be used wherever we are. So a young lady, she's studying in Scotland. She's questioning and wrestling with faith, really not feeling it, as we might say. She's going to a wedding, she gets on a bus, happens to be the wrong bus, but in God's understanding and providence, it is the correct bus. She sits next to a passenger. He's reading a Bible, and he also has a Patriarchs and Prophets book. She begins to ask, what is it you're reading? He tells her what it is and that he's going to a Seventh-day Adventist church. It starts her on a journey of faith. She goes to church with the chap on the bus, and then he gives her the book, Patriarchs and Prophets. She begins reading that book. She's reduced to tears in the opening chapters as she begins to see a revelation of God's love. She gets back to home in Dublin. She walks off the street in Dublin into the Ranelagh Church in Dublin. Here's the meetings that Pastor Mark Finley's running. Long story short, she gives her heart to Jesus Christ. I mean, that is just a wonderful illustration of how God can use us wherever we are just to be a witness and with people and just to share his love.
Pastor Ian Sweeney, thank you very much.
Pleasure.